and we are in there influencing that process. And of course, we had the 2011 European Union Act, that any more transfers of power under law will trigger another referendum. Of course, heaven forbid, but it will. So, I think we should stay in to try and fix this. 6, good strategy. We need all of us to focus on what Russia is doing and events in the Middle East. I can tell you this, the negotiations over Scotland before the referendum effectively paralysed much of Britain's government. Government in London right now is effectively paralysed. Britain is increasingly absent from world affairs, and because we're absent from world affairs, because we're obsessing with the EU, we're actually making that dangerous world more dangerous. And it will take at least 2, I suspect many more years, to negotiate Brexit. And during this very dangerous period, we will take our eye again off what is a very big strategic and dangerous ball coming our way. 7, and I'm moving towards conclusion, Chair. I did indeed have a dancing moment a few months ago. I was standing on the Lithuanian border with Russia, or I do, speaking to my Lithuanian colleagues, looking at the threat that they genuinely face from Russian forces and from the Putin government. I gave a speech in Moscow where I was in front of General Gerasimov, the chief of the Russian General Staff, and I told him to grow up. Didn't go down too well. But it's a problem. And you know, after what happened in Paris, and indeed in Brussels, I was at Zaventem Airport the day before, Britain's a leader. We need to be in there working with all our allies to ensure that we address what are terrifyingly dangerous issues. History. The control and direction of Europe is simply too important a critical British interest. And let me be truly controversial here. Boris Johnson was right, and wrong. Philip II of Spain, Louis XIV, Napoleon, Kaiser Bill, and yes, of course, Hitler, the H word, were all seen off because first England and then Britain stood firm, built coalitions, and came up with a prevailing political alternative. The EU is none of the above. It's nothing, you know, it's none of the above. Make no mistake, it's nothing to do with Adolf Hitler. Please quote that. Not to do with Adolf Hitler. But it is about power. It is about power, and we need to be in there contesting it. 9, Britain does not quit. The bottom line is this. Britain is too powerful. The situation is too dangerous. The coming change is too big for Britain to abandon influence now in a key institution. But to close, my challenge to both David Cameron, Donald Tusk, and the wider political elite is this. Those who run the show in London and Brussels must make me feel again that the EU belongs to me, the citizen, and is far more than the comfortable power club it seems from afar, and seems, believe me, on occasions even more so close up. The thing is that millions of others across Europe feel exactly the same way. The wind is blowing in our direction. It is time for Britain to fight, not quit, because the real battle for Europe, begins after the referendum, and Britain with friends can and must win it. And one final irony. After all the pain of the referendum, after all the pain, there's a very good chance, whether we stay or whether we leave, that we will end up in pretty much the same place. As a kind of leader of those outside the real Eurozone, or a kind of senior associate member. Why? Because we're too important and too powerful not to be in that kind of position. So, for the moment, I firmly believe that Britain should stay in the EU, help push forward reform, and ensure that Europe eventually becomes a safer and more prosperous place. It is not British to walk away from a Europe in crisis. Thank you very much. Commentator is founder and co-chair of Women for Britain, the campaign for women from all backgrounds who believe that Britain will thrive as a free, independent nation outside the European Union. Commentator.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm delighted to be here at what I think is a very exciting time in our history. I agree completely with Julian that the level of the debate so far has been really poor, and I think it's already got a lot better this evening. I think Julian's speech was excellent. It's disappointing, isn't it, to have the PM talking about genocide and World War III, the Chancellor talking about economic meltdown and house prices going down by 18%. I have to say, when he said that, I thought, well, given we're heading into World War III, maybe the house prices going down by 18% isn't actually that bad. Former London mayors, as Julian has said, talking about Hitler. I don't know what it is about former London mayors and Hitler. But I want to say that I am hugely pro-European. I've studied and worked in France. My son was born there. And for many years, our only home was in France. So you could say I've done pretty well out of Europe. But Europe is not the same thing at all as the European Union. And this is where Julian and I part company, because I agree with a lot of Julian's reasoning, but I disagree fundamentally with his conclusion that we should stay in. I don't believe the European Union is reformable, and I think it's now time for us to come out. I think the European Union is an out-of-date organisation. I believe it was set up for very good reasons, but I don't think it's serving its own people any longer efficiently or effectively. I do believe it's fundamentally undemocratic. I'm not sure whether, I think Julian might even agree with me on that. I believe it wastes billions and billions of taxpayers' money that should be spent here on our priorities or spent better abroad. I believe it stops this country having a sensible immigration policy. I also believe that the common agricultural policy keeps the third world poor. The tariff barriers rather than helping us trade with the third world, the dumping and the tariff barriers drive those farmers further into poverty and make them further dependent on the foreign aid begging bowl, and I think that's unacceptable. I also think the treatment of Southern Europe, and Greece in particular, has been abysmal. But perhaps the most important thing of all, I think the time has come now for us to reorientate our economy towards the global growing markets and no longer be shackled to what is, on almost any analysis, a declining European bloc. And the reason I think the time is right now for us to leave is because Europe has got to change. There is no vote in this referendum for the status quo, and I hope I can get onto that. But I just want to start quickly with the democracy question. Tony Benn, who's not someone I would normally be quoting, once said, you should ask people in power 5 questions. The most important one is, how can we get rid of you? Because the most potent symbol of our democracy isn't the House of Commons, the dispatch box, the state opening of Parliament. It is the removal van that turns up outside number 10 when we get rid of a government that has failed, and we change direction and we put in a government that we hope is going to do better. And it's that removal van which makes sure our governments listen to us and are accountable to us. And that's the fundamental problem with the European Union. The government, the executive, the only body in Europe with the power to initiate legislation is the unelected Commission. Not a single one of the 28 commissioners who run the EU have been elected. I'm going to take going to ask you now if you actually know who is our UK Commissioner. I'm a lawyer, you should never ever ask a question you don't know the answer to. I thought I'd take a risk there. And yes, absolutely right, well done. His name is Lord Hill, but you know, there you are. He's our Commissioner, he's out there responsible for helping to spend £120 billion, and hardly any of us know who he is, and he's never stood for an election ever in his life, not even to be a lowly district councillor like me. In fact, I'm sure you know this, to become a Commissioner, most people have to actually lose an election first. Neil Kinnock, Chris Patten, Lord Mendelsohn. It's only when they've been expressly rejected by their people at home that they get to go over there and become commissioners. And the problem with that is that we now know, according to the House of Commons Library, that over 60% of our laws, our statutory instruments and our regulations emanate from those unelected officials rather than from our own excellent domestic politicians that we can get to, like Phillip, in Westminster. Because you see, for me, it's absolutely fundamental. If we want to save our steel industry, if we want to reduce VAT on fuel so that people can afford their heating, if we want to limit the number of migrants in this country, we as the British people should be able to go to an election and vote for that, and then keep our politicians to account. And if they deliver, fine, and if they don't, we vote them out. And that is what we cannot do any longer. And it's because we don't have a proper functioning democracy in some of these key areas that I believe the time has come for us to leave. But I don't just think the EU has been bad for our democracy, I believe it's been bad for our economy as well. Even on the meanest Remain case, we are sending £8.5 billion to Brussels every year, £163 million every single week. We are at the moment, as you know, in quite a serious financial situation as a country, with our budget deficit still running at around £70 billion every single year. The money we are sending, and on the net figures, after all the rebates come back, after all the regional subventions have been given, would still build us a fully functioning, fully staffed NHS hospital every other week. We could do other things, of course, with that money. We could invest in the next generation. We could invest in better schools. We could invest in the job makers and the wealth creators. We could give a tax break to startups. There's any number of things we could do if we invested that money in our own economy. And then there's the regulatory cost on businesses. Only around 6% of businesses in this country export a bean to the EU. Yet 100% of businesses have to comply with all of the EU regulations. And Open Europe, which is an independent, I understand, an independent think tank, has estimated the cost of that regulatory burden on our own domestic businesses at £33 billion a year.